Inner Voice, a heartfelt chat with Dr. Foojan.
We're put together or psychologically structured. And what has been discovered is that we are relational beings, and everything that exists has that option of existing because they are in relationship with something else. So if you wish to just bring it down to a very sort of numerical level, you'd say that one's genetic background, those things that one has with them or brings with them at birth, immediately upon being conceived, a relationship begins with their outside world, whether through feeling or through some sort of perception, until they are born. And then all five of our sensory paths are open and we begin to relate. And it's through that relational process that we're
introducing a powerful new update from the Foojan app. Now with flexible subscription plans to fit your journey monthly, quarterly, or yearly. Our new AI-driven onboarding customizes your path to feeling better, faster, and enjoy a refreshed experience with stunning 3D interactive videos. Update now. Empower your inner voice with Foojan. Download today.
Welcome to The Inner Voice, a Heartfelt Chat podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Foojan Zeine. I'm a psychotherapist, an author, and the founder of the International Awareness Integration Institute. Today, I will be talking to Dr. Rogers Follansbee. He has his degree in philosophy and clinical psychology from the Universidad de Navarra from Pamplona, Spain. He has developed structured psychology theory and is the author of It's Not Your Fault book that we're going to be actually talking about. I really loved our conversation, from someone who's created a theory to another person who's created a theory, and looking at the concept of how human beings exist in relationships. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And get the book. It's Not Your Fault. It's a blue book on Amazon. So I really want you to really get into the conversation and see how it relates to you. And also be sure to subscribe to this podcast, my YouTube channel, and connect with me through my website, foojanzeine.com, FOJANZEINE.com, or any of my social media platforms. Share your thoughts with me. I love, 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 love to hear from you and hear your comments. Now, without further ado, here's Dr. Rogers Follansbee.
Listen up if you want to promote your personal growth and self-awareness. I found the Foojan app last month and I have been absolutely loving it. I personally have never learned guided meditation, but thanks to this app, I now have learned incredible tools for my own stress relief and emotional self-awareness. Not to mention, there are self-evaluation tools and professional coaching available to utilize however your journey to self-discovery takes you. Join Foojan today and redefine your life one step at a time.
Intentional Parenting, a practical guide to awareness integration theory, written by Dr. Jafari, Dr. Foojan Zeine, and Dr. Manoukian, three experts in human development, is your step-by-step guide to raising a healthy child prepared for a culturally integrated world. You're supported in parenting infants to adolescents using the latest evidence-based scientific research on parenting. Order your copy on Amazon now.
I'm so excited to be speaking with you, Dr. Rogers Follansbee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
I know we're going to be talking about your book, It's Not Your Fault. But more than that, I like to really talk to you about the psychology theory that you've created around structured psychology. And the main points on is about how to be related. And I know that you've worked almost 40 years on this theory to establish it. Can you share your path to creating this type of structured psychology theory?
Well, initially, I wasn't destined to create any theory at all. This happened years ago, back in the 70s of what now has become the last century. It sounds bloody awful, but sounds like a long time ago indeed. It wasn't that long ago, but I was at that time set up to write a doctor's thesis on projection. And when I did that, it took me some time to realize that nobody had been able to explain. They could describe, but they couldn't explain what this phenomenon was. And it was a very real phenomenon. We project all the time. We seem to exteriorize our feelings and our thoughts and our desires and our fears outside of ourselves. And I just couldn't find a proper academic reason or some kind of support out there that would correctly explain this phenomenon. And that is what prompted my need to go all the way back to zero and start from nothing and try to find a way of explaining this particular human phenomena. And it turned me into a theorist in the end.
Beautiful. I remember taking I took a certification course at Harvard, and the evolutionary psychology. I recall, and correct me if that doesn't fit for you, was that as a human being, we had to be able to read, let's say, read the room. If another animal showed up in our tribe, or if there's another human being showed up, we kind of had to figure out whether this person or this animal was danger to us or not. We were going to be safe. So the reading of the facial or body language of others was a form of survival. But then they took on another concept, which, the theory of the mind, where at one point we actually do project everything onto others. This is kind of what I recall. And can you share a little bit about your perspective on projection as you've done all of your research and studies?
Well, I think from the very beginning, classical psychology is full of demonstrations and sort of examples of what we call projection. And the classical view has continued to be classical. It hasn't changed. And it hasn't changed until now, when we're able to truly understand where this all comes from. But yes, all of those observations have been made, and the way we interpret those things that we relate to and why we interpret them the way we do. In conventional classical psychology is full of examples of exactly that, just what you mentioned. What there is not is an explanation for them. They give what they call a false, or what I call a false explanation, by saying, well, that's because we project. We see George as being menacing because we're projecting an image that we have inside ourselves, and to protect ourselves, we see that George is menacing, and we defend ourselves. We defend ourselves from George by projecting in the world outside, and in George himself, who is outside of me, the fears that I have and the concerns that I have. But that doesn't really explain anything. That doesn't tell anyone or any interested party why it is that I see George as menacing, for example, or an animal as menacing, or a situation as a threat. And that is why a theory like this was necessary in the first place.
So please share with us, from your perspective, why is it that we do?
Well, to answer your question, what would your question specifically be? How would you frame that?
Well, you, as I went through some of the concepts of your book, is you really look at we don't exist unless we're kind of in relations, right? So our existence is based on relations, and part of the way that we relate has to somehow create this essence of projection. But tell us, what is it? Because you're saying that projection was one of the key concepts of your theory, and the explanation of that was very important. And I know that you look at it from a relational context. What is it that you're bringing to the world of psychology as far as explanation of how does projection play a role in our relatedness, or how does relatedness create who we are, our identity, and our existence?
Well, initially, I guess the most important thing I could say, and with regard to what your question is about, is the way we're put together or psychologically structured. And what has been discovered is that we are relational beings, and everything that exists has that option of existing because they are in relationship with something else. So if you wish to just bring it down to a very sort of numerical level, you'd say that one's genetic background, those things that one has with them or brings with them at birth, immediately upon being conceived, a relationship begins with their outside world, whether through feeling or through some sort of perception, until they are born. And then all five of our sensory paths are open and we begin to relate. And it's through that relational process that we're able to live at all. And if we understand that, we understand that nothing can exist alone. And when we understand that nothing can exist alone, we double down on our understanding of our relational requirement for existence. So if that's true, evidently, anything that I relate to is part of me. That is to say, anything you relate to, your surroundings, your friends, those that you've had some sort of relational contact sometime in your life, are very much a part of you. So when you perceive something as being exterior to you, and yet very much a part of you, sometimes you can interpret that as you projecting something outside of yourself. When in reality, what's happening is you're simply perceiving something that you've already been in relationship with. It is a necessary process, a life and death option for you to relate to your world. And without that relationship, you simply cannot exist.
So going back to the sentence you just shared, where if I see you outside of me, I'm perceiving you as an experience that I've already experienced. Share what that means.
Well, it isn't as though you had already experienced it. When you have a new experience, for example, you see something that's new, an object, any object. Let's make the object impersonal and non-animate. That's the first time you related to that object. So you try to assimilate as best you can with all the knowledge that you have, what this object is, and so on and so forth. But once you've related to the object, that object becomes part of you.
Yeah.
You are not just one singular genetic force. You are a genetic force in relationship to your outside world. Everything that you've already related to and everything that you relate to now and in the future will become part of who you are. You are, if you cannot be in relationship with something else, you cannot be, period.
That I totally agree. Yes.
Okay.
And I do get that even with the latest neuroscience concept that when we see something new, that we have to relate, we kind of relate it in order to recognize it. We do relate it to the past information that we've had, whether it was an information or experience. So any information and experience inside of me has become part of me. As I hear you, it has become part of me. And anything new, in order to recognize it, I have to attach it or make it similar to, or recognize it by making it familiar, because of something inside of me has some sort of an experience with something or the information. So then I project that information to it, right? So for example, if I take, for the first time, I see something, like this, my brain, if has never seen glasses before, then it's going to say, oh, is that glass? Oh, okay, then I've known something about a glass. Then I will relate it to a glass. Or if it's eyeglasses, then if I've seen it before, I'll say, oh, that's eyeglasses, then that's useful. And anything partly new about it, then it becomes, again, part of my information and experience. And because it became part of me, that information became part of me, then it will kind of always be the way that these informations adds to how I expand myself with the relatedness to the world. I'm kind of hearing what you're saying and interpreting it for myself. Did I get that accurate?
Yes. All the experiences that you've had are relational experiences. Mm-hmm. That is to say that who you are as a genetic being has related to something or someone. And that experience has been sort of the end result of you relating as best you can that experience to all the other experiences that you've had. Now, to say that what you're viewing or experiencing in that case is reality, that's a stretch that philosophers would have a hard time accepting, and so would some psychologists. But what you have done is you've been able to relate to that object as best you can. And the minute you've done that, that object has become part of you. Mm-hmm. So when you see someone who seems knowledgeable, that knowledge has come from experience. How much experience has that person had? Well, that person has studied, or that person has been actively engaged in relating to the world around them in an academic way. And so they have learned things, and they are more prepared to understand and connect the things that they have related to before with the things that they are relating to now. So yes, absolutely. It's as you grow more. And the more you grow, the more you can grow still. So that's all part of our relational beings.
So you called your theory first a relational theory, and then you changed it to a structural theory. Can you share what the structure now, how does structure relate to your theory?
Well, I'd say that the structure itself just helps people understand what the theory is about. So the first thing we discover about the theory itself is the way human beings, all of us, connect or exist as best we can. And that requires a relational experience to take place. So when we talk about the structure, the first thing we sort of realize is that indeed we are structurally attached to all relations. And that underlines the need for relationships to take place if anything is to exist at all. So that's the first part of the structure, is to recognize that we are relational beings. And the second thing that we discover is that there is a requirement for continuance. That is to say, we find it vital for us to continue being who we are. That is to say, it would seem almost philosophically required that we do, because if we didn't, we couldn't exist anyway. So as you can see, there is an innate or a basic requirement for continuation of our existence at the same time. And that is the second element of the structure. And the third is that we need, as living, breathing human beings, a confirmation of that process. The fact that we are relational beings and that we continue being relational beings with what? With what final destiny, or with what objectivity? And that objectivity is our relationship with the object world around us. So those three things form the structure. The fact that we are relational, continuing, and confirming. That happens in every single living thing that exists, and very especially, and far more complicatedly, that isn't English, but you understand what I mean. It forms the idea of what the human being is. That is the human being, and that is the structure that we all live by.
You chose to put the name of your book, It's Not Your Fault. What does that have to do? How come you chose Not Your Fault? Is it because we're part of the relationships that we create, and then this give and take, this give and receive of information and relatedness of an existence is just being formed without being conscious around it? Or is it a consciousness around this type of a relationship? Do I only react in these relationships of how it's coming, and I just observe and who I am as a reaction to relationships, although they become part of me? Or is there a conscious level of thought, emotions, behaviors that creates these relationships as I own them to be part of me?
Well, I think the most important part of understanding why the book is titled It's Not Your Fault is understanding that all of us behave according to a preset structure. That is to say, we don't really have the option of behaving in any other way. Thinking, constructing, behaving, whatever it is we think or do is always in accordance with the way we are structured. Each one of us is put together. Now, because we all have different genetic backgrounds and we all have different relational environments, each one of us is different. So no matter what we do or think or say or feel, that content will be different content from the content of anyone else. But it is content that is in direct relationship with the way that we are structured. That is to say, we don't really have the option, if you wish, to behave in any other way than the way that the structure demands that we behave. If we react in a certain way to something, it's because of our genetic background and the content of that thing that we're in relationship with. We can only behave that way. We don't have a choice. That is why the title of the book is It's Not Your Fault. You are simply obeying a structure. You have the option of choosing what way you would like to behave if you wish. But it is always due to the fact that you are structured in the way you're structured that you do behave the way you do.
So as the neuroscientists are very confirming about you don't have free will, and you're sharing the same thing. There is no free will, that the structure is the structure was a combination, and that structure came in through as a combination of the genetic factor, the environment you were living, and that created the structure in relationship with all that was between you and your environment at that moment. And since that coding has been done in that structure, then from here on, the basic choices you have are still very basic within the structure. There isn't anything beyond the structure that you are.
Exactly. Your mention of free will, for example, which I think is very helpful and will be helpful for your viewers. No, of course, when you understand what free will pretends to be, or it tries to be.
I like the word pretends. I like that.
Well, there's not a lot of respect on this side of the room for that particular concept, but it is an interesting one. And it is one that religion has used throughout the centuries as one of the concepts that they use to understand human beings. But if you understand, there's also a concept that you should keep in mind when talking about will and the desire to do something, or the fear that one may feel about something else. There is always, and has to be always, a determining factor. That is to say that every choice that we have, we can make only because of the experience, the relational experience that we've had, along with the genetic point of departure that those experiences share with the genetic background that we have. So whatever it is that we choose is promoted or stimulated by past experience and genetic properties. There is no freedom in that. They are predetermined, although you'll find that each individual will have his or her own options for choosing A or B. That's because of the immense complexity of each one of us and our determined likes and dislikes and fears and happinesses and Lord knows what. They're all decided upon the fact that we are who we are through the relational experiences that we've had. But we always need something that will determine our choices.
Well, there's a lot that's happening in my head, but I still want to learn about your theory, because I do agree with the concept that there isn't a very free reign about whatever. Like I cannot choose to be a dog right now. That's not, like, my free will does not allow that, right? I cannot will to change my eye color from hazel green to blue. I can get, a synthetic contact that is blue and pretend that my eyes are blue, but I can't just will it that my eyes are going to turn blue. So yes, I get that. There's also this other piece, which is that when we have an experience, such as if I was born into a mother who was depressed or a father who was, an addict, and I went through my traumas and I was very depressed and traumatized for many years and all of those. But when there was an experience filled with love, when there was an experience of me going to psychotherapy and experiencing this acceptance, these new experiences, which happened in relationships, definitely in relationships, as the experience came, there was a choice to say, yes, now I choose this piece. I choose to love. I choose to heal. I choose to look at the world from this angle versus the ones that I had. I chose to shift my thought process. So finally, the kind of like even the, let's say, a chronic chemical depression that was there due to the circumstances changed to where I can have, feeling of happiness and bliss more often than, sadness. So the change can happen with the choices, which kind of happen with the experiences that we have in relationships. And then because we have a more pleasurable experience that works for us, then we could choose the next levels. So yes, there's predetermined based on what is, but within these experiences that we get, we have those choices, limited choices, but still choices that are in front of us that we move. Is that?
Yep, I understand what you're saying, and I think that one has to make find a difference between what choices are and what free choices are. The free, the concept of having a free choice is as though you had no determining factors whatsoever. That is to say, nothing that would push you in one direction or the other when you made the choice. If you want to change your eyes from hazel green to blue, first of all, it'd be interesting to find out what the reason might be that you'd want to do that. But your choice of using, for example, a contact lens that was blue instead of hazel green was determined by all kinds of factors. Perhaps you met someone that you thought was intriguing that had blue eyes, or that you were fascinated by an actor, a cinema figure that had blue eyes. You could go on and on and on, finding the reasons why you wanted in the first place to have blue eyes instead of hazel green. So there are factors and determining factors that will push you or lean you towards the choice that you're making of putting in contacts that are blue. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about free choice. So choices, we have many, many choices. All of us have it. But when someone says, that was a bad choice you made, well, perhaps it was, according to that person, but they have no idea what determining factors pushed you or me or whoever it may be to make the choice they made.
So accepting and knowing these concepts of prefactors, which are there, which, they're part of my structure, let's say, as I was created and coming into this world and the relations that showed up in front of me, whether I determined and created them or they showed up in front of me, which I chose them and related to them, then the structure moves me forward. And what now? Is it more the awareness of it? That awareness that I don't have, I can have compassion toward myself, so I don't fault myself, especially the name of it is not your fault. I don't fault myself. I don't damn myself. I look at what I do and the awareness and the acceptance and the compassion of what I do. How does that affect my life? How does this theory, it's a psychological theory, how does that in any format useful? My point is that this is me, that always somehow has to be useful in my life, which is like, okay, from my structure, from my pre-programming, I'm asking you, how is this useful? How do we create this to be useful?
Exactly. And that is something that I think we all value tremendously, is to pragmatize as best we can whatever it is that we're spending our time on. And is this any good? Can I use this? Does this make any sense? So the question is a very good question. And let me answer it in this way. An enormous, incalculable amount of anxiety comes from the lack of knowledge. That is to say, we fear things, we feel trepidation towards things, we hesitate about things, choices that we make, places that we want to reach, simply because we don't understand, we don't know enough to give us those determining factors that are required in making that choice. And the fact that we are very conscious of our foibles and shortcomings creates a level of anxiety that is annoying. It's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. It's fearful. It's not something that we embrace. It's something we want to invade. So understanding the way that we are structured psychologically removes a very large proportion of that ignorance. Let's just call it what it is. It's ignorance. It's simply that we don't know the answers to all those questions. But when we do, when we understand the way we are structured and you are structured and our best friends are structured, we can begin to understand why they did what they did, why they behaved the way they behave, why they reacted this way or that way, why I feel fear about going to a special meeting, or whoever I happen to be in relationship with may be under stress, but why? Having the answers to those questions relieves tremendously the amount of anxiety that we feel. And understanding that anxiety is what later leads into more serious psychological problems, you'll understand the value of understanding, the value of having the knowledge of how we are pieced together, structured, and how it can help you go on in life in a much more pleasant and positive way.
Everyone, get this book. It's Not Your Fault by Dr. Rogers Follansbee. What an there's something that shows up for me, which is, and I'm sure you've worked with this clients, I've worked a lot with clients where they look at how I have been, how I have structured, but they have a negative slant on it. And it's as if like, okay, these were the cards that were dealt for me. I was born into the genetics of this type of a family with these type of illnesses, with this type of traumas, with these types of, upbringing, and I'm doomed because obviously the structure is that, and I'm doomed. And then it's almost because I can only operate from the structure and this is it, I can understand where it showed up. But some people go like, it's not fair. How come it was me that got this? And, the neighbor got the better ones and I didn't.
Yeah.
And then they go into this doom and gloom space of a depression because it becomes this like hopelessness about the future, the hopelessness of about, anything changing. And the depression really sets in and then, again, not fair. And there's nothing that I can make it to be fair. Like world is this, my life is this, and they just sit with that resentment. How does structural psychology support that person?
Well, that's another good question. And I think you've painted that picture quite accurately. I think many of us feel as though we are in situations that are not fair situations. And
we got the short end of the stick.
Yeah, we got the short end of the stick, exactly. And why? What rules are out there that have made us this way? And don't I have a choice? Can't I say I don't want this anymore? And well, we find out very quickly that no, we don't have a choice. We are who we are at birth and have done our best in making ourselves who we are today in the society that we were born in. But there's one factor that you have to keep in mind, and that is go back once again to ground zero and realize how we're structured. Since we're structured relationally, we understand that half of who we are depends on the environment that we are in, the environment that we relate to, the people that form a part of that environment, and the things that form a part of that environment. And we do have an option. There is an option out there. What if we changed our environment? We know we can't change our parents, or our sisters, or our brothers, our uncles, or our cousins, but we can change the world around us. So we do have some choice. We do have some freedom. And that freedom lies in the object world that surrounds each one of us. we can change that world. We can go somewhere else. And that won't change who we are genetically, or it won't change the parents that we have. But it does change a substantial amount of the people that we will become. The people that we are in the case that we are at the present time, or where we want to go, or what we want to do. And that will change radically what our future looks like.
So there is an element to your theory which is active. It's not just looks at things from a passive place and acceptance of it is what it is. But there's also this activation of, yes, first, you got to get that this is it. And then when you're aware of this is it, and that it's okay that this is it, that it's not your fault, you haven't done anything wrong for this to be this is it, but this is it. And now you can also explore within your environment, within what is, what are some of the next choices that you want to make if what is not something that you like.
Exactly. You have an option. You have possibilities. You have different futures that you can choose. And that all depends on where you are and who you relate to and where you relate to those people that you relate to. That can all change. It can change radically. Change cities, change towns, change countries, learn a new language, deal with different people with different ideas and different values. That will change you radically and allow you to be the person that you are. Because if you are struggling with your genetic background that's fixed, that's not going anywhere, in a certain environment, evidently that was the wrong environment for you. You're struggling. Go to a place where you don't have to struggle. Go to a place that will understand who you are. And that option you have, you can choose as best as you can. Now, it depends on finances, it depends on all kinds of different factors, but there is a choice. And if you have the option of changing your environment, that object world that surrounds you and makes you who you are, remember, you're a relational being, do it. It may be a strain, it may be daring, there may be threats out there, but if your present environment is not one you're getting along with and creating stress and creating doom in your life, change it.
1 minute or so, is there anything we haven't shared that you really want people to know?
Well, I think the most important thing is understanding who we are. And as simple as it may appear, that we are a genetic entity that is in relationship with the world around them, that genetic entity is incredibly complex, as is the world around us. And understanding, therefore, that the options that we have in life are tremendous. There's no end to them. So it is not a bleak, pre-structured world out there. We have options. And I think that if everyone understands that the first step is knowing and accepting the way all of us are structured or put together psychologically, we'll understand that there is a beautiful world out there that we can take advantage of. And that is an option that we'll always have.
I think going back to the first conversation, that when we accept our structure, that it also allows us to accept other people's structure, because that also helps with the projection concept, because of understanding that each person comes with their own structure and that whatever they're behaving is through that lens. You can still choose to have them in your environment or not, but at least it gives another level of possibly understanding and a compassion for which is behaving however they are. And then yet we get to choose whether we want them in our environment and we want to relate to them or not.
Well, I think that I'm glad you brought that up, and I know you're trying to close down, but it's fascinating to see that and to understand that comprehending others and why others do the things they do, say the things they say, that's a vital part of all of this at the same time. We can't figure out why Jerry yelled at me or Sally wouldn't go to the cinema or wouldn't, something that has annoyed us. Why have they done that? If we understand the way we're structured, that will help us enormously understand all those mysteries out there that we never could figure out before.
Beautiful. How could people find you?
Yes, well, the best thing to do is there is a internet site that you can go to, which is structuredpsychology.com. That contains everything. There is all the information you need to also interact with what you're reading and the book. I think it would be always a positive thing if the book is short, you can read it in an afternoon, but it does help enormously to understand the person you are and the options you have in life. So Amazon has that book. So if you just go to Amazon and put in "It's Not Your Fault," remembering that blue cover, because there are other books that have the same title, "It's Not Your Fault" with the blue cover, that I think you'll find to be very, very interesting and an enormous help in understanding who you are.
It was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you very much.
Yes, it was a beautiful conversation to look at. I've developed a psychology theory. It's called awareness integration, and it is very relational, that we deal with each and every relationship that the person has and kind of look at become aware and then integrate whatever it was. So it was a pleasure to have a conversation from someone who's created theory to another person who's created theory, and look at the specifics of how you've come to that space, from where you have come to that space. How is it that you're looking at the world and the basic structures and how to intervene and move forward, accepting that and moving forward. And as I say, my brain always works as, how is this useful every day? How can I use this in an everyday? And
you're are we off the air now?
No, we are still on.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Because I was just going to say that it's a joy to work with someone who has some real interest in understanding who they are and where they're going and why. I think the why part is the most interesting of all.
Yeah.
So read the book, and I think you'll be fascinated by it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking the time to being with us, and everyone who's listening and viewing us.
Thank you very much.
And for all of you who are out there, if you liked what we talked about, share it with everybody else, and put your comments on the YouTube or any of the social media or the podcast for us, and any message that you have to relate to Dr. Rogers Follansbee, I will share with him, and create an amazing life for yourself and everyone around you. And until next week, bye-bye.
Are you a psychotherapist looking to enhance your practice? The Awareness Integration Therapy, developed by Dr. Foojan Zeine, is a comprehensive guide to the principle and techniques of this powerful therapeutic approach. Join the growing community who have elevated their practice and expanded their skills by embracing Awareness Integration Therapy and witnessing its life-changing impact. Order your copy on Amazon now.